call on to Rene for that introduction.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. First, I would like to thank very much Prognos for organizing this conference and in this very nice setting, and also for all the side events they're preparing for us. Also, I would thank Vladimir to allow me to very briefly introduce you to the. We're working on the SDMX is a statistical data and metadata exchange standard. It's a data exchange standard that 7 international organizations have developed. These organizations are the Bank for International Settlement, the European Central Bank, Eurostat, IMF, OECD, UN, and World Bank. And this is a standard that is comprised of a set of technical standards and content-oriented guideline. The idea of this standard is to ease the exchange of statistical information. And this poster is, well, this is a postcard that comes from a bigger poster, is to announce our, I think it's our 5th or 6th SDMX Global Conference that will be taking place in Paris at the OECD in September. And the postcard has also the draft program behind. SDMX is really an enabler for the computer-to-computer exchange of data. So as such, it's pretty dry. What is the real benefit is when you're developing, for example, mobile apps, or when you want to feed your computer with statistical data, then you know how to get the data, like the message, the statistical message, the standard for communicating with SDMX web services. All this is an ISO standard, is a set of ISO standards, so it really facilitates the development of the data message to feed, whether it's a mobile application or your computer, your database, internal database. So I will have these postcards and data production environment in the statistics department using a Prognos-based solution. So some quick history about IMF and Prognos. Like Vladimir said, it started about 5 years ago when our research department wanted to redesign, re-engineer their process for the production of one of our main flagship publication that is called the World Economic Outlook. So that they wanted to adopt a modern solution to the production of the World Economic Outlook and all its underlying data. And they went to Prognos, and together with Prognos, they built a solution that they call the ECOS, the Economic Outlook Suite. So Outlook to align with World Economic Outlook. So ECOS is a Prognos-based solution that provide a lot of features for an organization interested in data production. So from the collection, validation, aggregation, and all the way to the production of dissemination-ready outputs. So Outlook ECOS, this Prognos-based solution, has been adopted by our research department, and more is adopted by our other functional departments, such as the Fiscal Affairs Department, Monetary and Capital Market Department, for the management of all their cross-country database. And more also our area department are moving to ECOS. And in the statistics department, we are currently using we have a legacy-based time series software that's been through a number of iterations, and we are slowly looking at all the benefit of adopting an ECOS-based solution to really streamline our data production process. And just to give some background in terms of our data production, like currently we have a staff of about, it's a small production. We have 32 people that are solely involved in the data production, like collection, validation, and making the data ready for dissemination. We have another group responsible for the dissemination. We also have economists that do some validation. So our time series software has overall, we manage 14 million time series in the various steps of, in a collection environment, in a validation environment, and dissemination environment. So that's quite, and we update about 1 million time series a year So if we compare that to the production of a statistical office in an advanced economy, it's a very small size production. But for us, it's highly important. It's all data that we collect from our 188 member countries on various key aspects, various macroeconomic statistics, either in the real sector like GDP, or fiscal data, monetary data, external sector statistics. So it's all key data that we receive, we validate, we provide to our area department or to the public in general. So it's highly important, and most important, what we see is that in the next 5 years, we see that volume of data increasing by a factor of about 5-fold. There was this mention of big data. We're not yet going to big data. We're still harvesting our data from national data producer, but we're looking more and more in how to actually leverage the availability of big data. But we are currently not positioned to do that, and this is why we're looking forward to moving our production environment to an ECOS-based solution and freeing up resources and giving us the technology to better leverage big data. So, like, what are the two initiatives that led us to think that there will be such an increase in our data production? Well, first we realized from the financial crisis that we didn't have all the data needed to really inform us sufficiently in advance of what was coming up. And also, as a result, we also initiated what is called the G20 Data Gap Initiative, where we have a number of projects where we're working with countries so that they would produce a larger amount of data to give us more information to better position ourselves to forecast like any future issues or any really manage like how we will do our surveillance activities. So and as was mentioned, like whether in terms of staff or IT resources, these remain constant. They have been constant for the last 5-6 years for us, and we don't expect to be provided with any more resources to cope with what is expected to be this 5-fold increase in the production of our statistical data. So as a result, we really see that we have a number of things we need to achieve. We need to rapidly position ourselves for the increasing demand, and therefore we're looking at a data production system that would be scalable and allow us to free up resources to do other activity. We need also to increase the timeliness. It was referred to velocity. Increase the timeliness at which we make available the data and metadata. They have to come in the morning and be available to our users in the afternoon, whereas now it takes anything between 3 days to 2 weeks. So that's really an issue. So we have to find and adopt a system that will really make it much faster to deliver the data to our consumer. And we need to reduce incidents of data or metadata errors. So we need to have a validation system that is much more error-proof than the current one. So I also mentioned the importance of having scalable operations, because like in our current legacy system, any developing or setting up any new database for any new product and putting any new validations require us to ask the IT specialist to set up the database. So it really does not empower our users. Like I need my staff to set up quickly in a matter of a couple of days to set up a new database for a new data product. And whereas now I need to set up IT requests, discuss requirements, setting up. So it's all extremely costly in the current environment. So I need to adopt a standard procedure in which for which to set up my database, a generic production process. So what we see from the ECOS solution is that we can really it really provides us with the technology and the metadata and work practice. Like it allows us to set standards and use the solution to implement these standards in an easy way. If we're doing that properly, what we're looking at is actually reorganizing our operations. Right now, the way we're set up is sort of like a much more in a silo operation, which is the approach that has been used for years in statistical offices. So we have an expert in one domain, for example, experts in fiscal data that collect the data, validate the data, prepare them for dissemination. And we have another set of experts in real sector statistics that do the same. So it really is a slow process. Of course, we have these experts, but in terms of the speed of production, it really reduces the ability to be much more agile. So the setup we're looking at is now is much more a workflow setup, where we would have like sort of three teams. A team really responsible for the collection of the data. And when I say collection, I'm thinking much more beyond the simple reporting of data, where a national office or central bank sends us the data and we process the data. We're developing a data collection system that is much more agile and will allow us to collect data in any sort of form that's available, including harvesting big data. And then we would have the production system. Production such as which includes like the validation, all the various steps of validation. So we would have this group of experts that would really push the data from reception all the way to being ready for dissemination. And then the third team would be a team for content delivery. This team would specialize and adopt and in the implementation of visualization, analytical package, or prepare the data for different type of users, either the high expert, the expert who wishes to download the full database, to the users that's only looking for the key aspect, key points, and want like data that are charts that he can immediately download and put in his presentation. So we would have these three teams that would be responsible for delivering the data. And it would be supported by a fourth team, which is the standard processing technology team, which would ensure that all the team adhere to our set of standards, which would really facilitate implementation of a workflow process in the production of the data. And each of them would have operational independence. So collection, production, content delivery would work separately, but this would be integrated in the workflow through generic interfaces between each of the operational team. So like very simply put, you would have these three teams specialized in the three aspects of the data production and supported by standard processes and technology team. And between each of the three steps, there would be a set of interfaces that allow the easy flow of the data. So like this approach is really made possible by the eco solution that we've been developing with Prognos during the last 4 or 5 years. At the moment, we don't see the need to really make any modification. We didn't find any gaps that need to be filled using the Prognos solution to implement this. So it's really a matter of, for us, to incorporate to put our data into this ECOS platform and to prepare the various reports that would support the integration of the workflow. The only development we're doing is on this collection module, which we'll build in-house. So like which will support like any type of harvesting of data, and the interface between the collection and the two other modules, which are fully based on the ECO solution. So one important aspect is the efficiency of our operations. Because like I said, we have had fixed resources at the IMF for the last 5 years. Actually, the timing was not so good. We went through a downsizing exercise. We started in 2007 and we implemented the downsizing in 2008. So right on time with the financial crisis. And since then, we've been working with a fixed amount of resources. So it is critical for us to increase the efficiency of our operation. And I mentioned earlier, like the first key solution is, for us, key objective is the timeliness of our data delivery. So what we will be implementing is a workflow automation, because if one important, well, it's not a finding, it's a reality, is in our current solution, like it offers a lot of validations, but all of these validations come into a set of like possible discrepancy between various areas in the data, and we have to have an officer that generate that reports, look at that reports, determine which of these validation issues need to be addressed and which one don't need to be addressed, and then address them, and then change the data, re-upload the data. So there's a lot of manual tasks involved in that work. So it slows down the process a lot. It increases the risk of error, of missing important issue. So it's a very tedious work process. So the idea is to automate all these tasks. So use the intelligence we can build in the Prognos report and lead us to have a validation report that only highlight critical issues based on criteria that we've set, and guide the data processing officer to these issues that needs addressing, and simply let go the other issues, while at the same time documenting these issues automatically through the metadata field available in the ECOS platform. So there's quite a lot of work done. We have already started to fully document all our validation practice. So we have if you wish, an inventory of all the validation that we do, the type of time series, whether they're at the observation time series or data set level. Like, so we fully documented all this information with the objective to use them as a sort of standard. So like there will be this pool of validation from which you can draw and incorporate in each of the processing environment. So we would much more standardize our practice instead of using human judgment to determine the type of validation. So that's what I said here. It's really about automating the test and validation, and only using human intervention when it's needed. We expect that it will reduce human intervention in data processing by at least 70% and allow us to really free up resources to be, well, to use human intelligence where it's really needed. So like, this is sort of the generic processing model. The idea is like, we're developing this collection interface, but from then on, this is a Prognos-based solution. And so the data automatically is inputted in the system, and there's a certain number of validations that are run. And based on set criteria per domain and per country, the report is either accepted and goes through the next step, or is rejected with a set of error message and information provided to the reporting agency to inform them of what is needed as a correction. And then it goes through the flow. Next step is to the processing officer, which are the ones in my division, which either the data passes because the errors identified are not critical, the errors are still documented in the metadata. We call them validation metadata area. So we keep this information on file. And then it goes through the next step. If it's rejected, then our information management officer review the information, decides to return it to the reporter with some, or make any correction, make sure that these corrections are included as part of the validation metadata, and it continues to the next step. Here it's the involvement of the, we're in the statistics department, we have 5 divisions. There's my division, which is the data processing division. It's called Statistical Information Management Division. So we do data processing, we do dissemination, and we're responsible for developing the infrastructure and processes. We also have 4 topical divisions in the various topics of interest to the IMF, so external sector statistics, monetary, government, fiscal, and government and monetary statistics. And the economists here have quickly validate the data at a certain step. In the current process, it's highly manual. So we here generate like tables of data, identifying the error, and we pass it manually, sometimes on paper, to the economist who then reviews. In this workflow process, the economists simply go and access the database. Actually doesn't even access the database, is providing with a link to the report of interest, where is action, if any, is needed, and then either it's returned here or all the way, a change is made, or it sometimes doesn't even go to the economist and pass through. So we expect that this process will save us a lot of time and really increase our efficiency. And in the current legacy environment, it's really impossible to adopt such a process, a workflow process, where most of the actions are determined based on the standard and the logic that you develop and put into the system. So really, our objective is to increase the efficiency of our operation. And by that, we want to really reduce to minimum the error in the data. And as I said, like right now, we do a lot of validation, but it's highly manual because we have all these, let's say, discrepancy report or issues report, but it's pages in a report, and you have to really validate all these issues. Right now, we're going to focus on like what are the business needs in terms of determining the level of errors that is acceptable and the level of errors that needs action. And we will make sure that we can be responsive to this need and adapt the validation process as needed. As I said, we have already developed this portfolio of validation tests. We have this inventory of various tests, and we will be flexible in our ability to change the type of validations that we do, or the level of validation we do for any data series through the system. So we will be flexible in evolving it as our business needs change. We'll make sure that validation are integrated into the metadata, so to avoid redoing what has been done once. Like right now, we fully rely on the fact that our staff has done such a fix to a country before, and we'll redo it. So it's really not the right way to do things. So what we'll do, we'll use the ECOS platform and make sure to integrate the result of the validations. And so whenever a validation flag arises and we let it pass, that the reason why and the fact that it has been passed through in the past will be integrated in the validation metadata. So we'll really streamline the process and avoid that we redo the same validation twice. And we see our ability to really increase the volume of validation of diagnostic by quite a large factor, because we actually will only focus on the areas where the validation did not pass by a certain criteria. So in terms of the validation life cycle, we see that we'll be able to perform a much larger variety of automated tests. And only, as I said a few times already, only bring our either our data reviewing officer or the economist only bring them to the key issues that needs addressing. So the focus will not be to identify the issues, but simply to investigate and decide what action is needed. And the investigation will be made much easier because whenever there will be issues, we will also identify and standardize the path to going down to the detail that needs to be reviewed. Like, for example, if you identify a discrepancy in the direct investment between this and that, then automatically there will be a report provided that points you to what could be the sources of these issues. So, and then really our resources will be put on the action, which is where we really add value to the full process, and that's where we'll focus human intervention. So that's, we've already developed a proof of concept of this full workflow to one of our key data output, which is the balance of payments. So we developed this prototype of workflow for balance of payments validation processing, and it has been quite successful. We're really happy with the outcome, and we really see that it will allow us to achieve all the savings that we need to achieve. So like this provides you with some of the various reports that are used, like either cross-database comparison, cube analysis of the data. There's here that provides you to a diagnostic summary with chart detail diagnostic, and the metadata integration, which whenever there's an issue, it automatically feeds into validation metadata, so the result of the validation, it is kept through time in a structured way. So that's just an overview of how the workflow would, more detailed overview of how the workflow, the various steps in the workflow, where we have these are my guys, SI, statistical, and this is the topical division economist. So that's the only two interventions. All of the rest of the operation is streamlined to an automated workflow process. And the area where we have to work is really in the collection. So how to collect data from more source, how to integrate big data. So that's where the fun is putting its resources, because all of this is supported by the actual Prognos platform that we have. Of course, it's supported. We still have to incorporate the validation. We have to design the workflow. We have to prepare the report. So there's a lot of work ahead for us in terms of implementing that end-to-end solution. But it's at least we know we have the tool to do this implementation. So, and this is just some of the user's interface. We have to design very simple interface, especially the interface that talks to our economists. It's not about having them to learn the Prognos platform. It's simply about making sure they get a message that tells them what type of action is needed, and they simply open the link to the various reports that guides them to these actions. And as I said, the ECOS solution provides us with the tools to do that. We just have to put the data, the validation, develop the report form. So that's why we're talking about a 3 years development or implementation phase to really position us to be able to produce much more statistics. That's my presentation. Any questions? Clarifications? Or